pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have another review for you of a novel I just finished yesterday. It's called The Loved Ones by Sonya Chung, a 2016 novel that didn't get much attention when it came out, published by Relegation Books in the US. Sonya Chung is a Korean-American novelist. This is her second novel, and I loved it. It was not a perfect novel, and its imperfections brought my rating down from a 5-star to a 4-star reading, but I loved it, and I want to tell you about it because this book needs more attention. I'm pretty sure this will be the very first review on BookTube. I first heard about it from Liberty Hardy on the Book Riot podcast, All the Books, and then my good friend Jenny from the book podcast Reading Envy read it and gave it 5 stars as well, and those are the only two people I've ever heard of having read it and having loved it. But I am going to add my voice to the small choir in hopes that you will track this book down and pick it up sometime. So one of the things to love about this book is that it's unclassifiable in the way that we'd like to classify our non-straight white male fiction. Sonya Chung is Korean American, but she has written a novel about a Korean American family and a mixed marriage between an African American man and a white American woman. And so I think one of the reasons that this book has not received the attention it deserves is because people don't know where to put it on the shelf. Which section? Is it the African American literature section or the Asian American? And this book complicates that by telling all of those stories really, really well. It's a story about two families named Lee. One is Korean, one is a mix of African American and white American. That's not confusing. I didn't get confused by that, but they all have the same surname, Lee. The African American character is Charles, and his wife, who is white, is Alice. And they have 2 children, Veda and Benny. Veda, at the beginning of the story, which starts in about 1984, is something like 8 or 9 years old, and Benny is something like 5 or maybe 6 years old. And one of the things that Chung does brilliantly in this novel is create wholly believable, perfectly rendered children. And that's difficult to do. I loved reading about these kids. They were so true to life. I know kids like this, and so do you, but we don't encounter them very often in the pages of fiction. Bravo for that. They get a babysitter through a co-worker of Alice's, a 14 or 15-year-old Korean-American girl named Hannah. And she is really, I guess you could say Charles and Hannah are the 2 main characters, but really I think this is Hannah's story. And she is also brilliantly realized. I loved her, and we follow her from that age until she's in her early 20s, as we follow all the characters most of the characters over the same timeline. Just the depth of the characterization. Sonya Chung's writing is very simple and plain and not particularly quotable. She's not that kind of writer. But the writing is rich and pulled me in emotionally in a really kind of almost meditative way. I will try by reading you the opening section. The opening section is a flashback, because we don't ever go that far back in the story, except for this opening section to 1951, and this is about the birth of Charles, the African-American character who's the husband of Alice and father of the 2 kids. Kenyon Street, Northwest, Washington, D.C., 1951. Was the little girl who pulled open the front door with 2 hands. Yellow dress and yellow ribbons at the ends of her braids. He saw that the dress was too tight across her chest, and riding up where her buttocks were rounding out, fraying at the hem. It looked sad and poor. But she loved the dress, obviously, wearing it in the middle of winter. Her mother sent her to answer the door, he knew. The grandmother, or uncle, would have blocked his way. He ain't come to the hospital, why he come now? He wasn't sure he didn't want his way blocked. He was late, even. Said he'd come in the afternoon. Somehow couldn't come in the light of day. But now, porch light on, cold, dark night giving off starlight, too, He felt blinded and caught out. The girl stepped aside, big eyes and silent, always eyeing him like that. "You're not my daddy," the eyes said. "Give us back our mama." He stood on the porch, unmoving. The girl held the door. Inside he heard the baby crying, its mother's muffled, tired voice. His own mother had warned him, his big brother, his friends too. "Don't start something you can't follow it through. Widow with 4 children, 3 wild boys, that homely girl. Can't have her and not them. Woman's eyes are heavy on you." He liked it, though, her being older, her full hips, loving on him so heavy. How he could make her dark spirits light up. She was deep sad when he met her that night at the club, and sexy in low-cut electric blue. After that night, all he had to do was smile his easy smile, touch her where and how she wanted. He liked, too, making the rest of them shake their heads and purse their lips. He was after the disapproval, the satisfaction of it. Eventually, too many years later, he'd outgrow that. Feet led heavy, the girl waiting. Then, swollen, slippered feet coming down the stairs, hem of her house dress, baby in her arm. Baby boy. She saw who it was and lit up like she always did, then stopped short on the landing. Saw him frozen there, outside. Saw how, at the sight of her and the dark bundle, his face drew blank and hard, eyebrows straight across like thick painted lines on a road. The girl looked back and forth between them. Essie raised the boy up onto her shoulders, turned its face towards the door. Scrunched brown face, fist up by its cheek. It kicked its legs and opened its black licorice eyes. And Frank saw, he saw everything then. The boy was his, for sure. If he doubted, now he knew. Charles, they were calling him, but he didn't know it, not then, not for a long time. There was an instant, if it was that long, the shoulds, the rights, the wrongs flitted in and out of his mind like dumb brown moths flapping in a light bulb. He shut the light. No. Don't want. Want other, want out, out there. Got plans, not here. This, them. Feet no longer led, feet flying down the steps, onto the black street, flying away into the night, to life, unlived, calling. Okay, so that's a longer passage just to give you an idea of Sonya Chung's writing, which I really enjoyed. And Hannah becomes a babysitter, part-time babysitter, just, a couple hours a day or whatever, and then they increase her hours to the kids, and the kids love her, and she loves the kids. You know what? I'm not going to say very much more about the plot. I've already gone on quite a ways. I'll just say there's a tragedy. It happens about a third of the way through the book, rips your heart out, and the rest of the novel is kind of spent tracing the effects of that tragedy on all the various characters, and really kind of splits up all the relationships that we had been following up until then, with 1 or 2 notable exceptions. Okay, so while I have tentatively decided that I do my best reviews when I just speak off the cuff with no notes, inevitably things do get missed. So I do want to paste in another comment here. Not only does the rest of the novel concern all of the ramifications of this tragedy, but Sonya Chung delves back into the past family of origin explorations with almost all of the characters. So it goes forward into the future, but also back into the past. Really well told, very emotionally compelling. It was also a book that I couldn't read very much at a time. I started this book on New Year's Day, and now it's March 21st, and I just finished it yesterday. It was so intense that I loved it so much, but I just a little bit, and okay, it's enough, and then a few days later pick it up and read a little bit more. That's a sign of a good novel. But it wasn't perfect, and I thought it kind of, not fell apart, that's too strong, but it went off the rails a bit at the end. I don't expect all the pieces of the story to be tied together, but I just felt certain things got a little bit out of control. There was a few too many extraneous characters that got a little bit too much airtime. The novel is 300 pages. It could have been probably 50 pages less and been a better novel for it. there were a few surprisingly hokey scenes in the midst of an otherwise completely compelling and unsentimental novel that I was disappointed by, but they were very few. One of the epigraphs is about a coffin emblem that was discovered in an archaeological dig in New York City that came from West Africa, called the Sankofa, which is a symbol. I'll show you there's the symbol. And this one in particular, you can still find in gates in New York City apparently, and this is the one that was on the coffin. It comes from a West African proverb about returning to your past to get what you need. And that's the theme of the novel. It's mentioned here, I completely forgot about it, and then it's mentioned in the very last 50 pages, and I thought, that could have been integrated more powerfully throughout the novel, and it wasn't. Much more successfully, even though it still comes in the latter third of the book, is that Hannah ends up in Paris as a research assistant to a novelist, and she's researching Colette, and she is translating Colette. So there's two phrases that she uses for Colette's emotional and interpersonal life. One is, and please excuse, I'll put the French below because I'm probably going to massacre the French. I did practice, but I don't think it worked very well. One is les proches, which means kin or family, the people who are close by. But the other one is les bien-amis, which is the loved ones, and that's where the title comes from. That's the English translation of les bien-amis, the loved ones, the ones who are well loved. And this book is a rich exploration of the difference because, without exception, the kin relationships here are so dysfunctional and heartbreakingly like two ships passing in the night. But almost all of the characters do find loved ones, la bien-amis, people they can love well, and that makes it a really rich novel. Not completely successful, but beautiful, heartbreaking. I can't wait for Sonya Chung's next novel, and I can't wait for at least some of you to give this novel a try and tell me what you think. I think I've said enough. Thanks for watching.